I want you to picture the most intense movie experience you've ever had.
Okay.
You're in the theater, popcorn's all gone, you're gripping the armrests. It's a mystery thriller, right? The protagonist has spent 2 hours decoding clues, dodging bullets, and finally they kick open the door to the villain's
The big reveal.
Exact. They walk in,
Okay.
they see the truth, whatever it is. They turn to the camera, they open their mouth to speak, and then
Click.
total darkness.
No music, no credits, just the hum of the projector, or I guess the HVAC system in a modern theater.
Right. The screen just goes black. You're sitting there thinking, did the power go out? Did the file corrupt? You don't leave the theater saying, wow, what an artistic choice.
No, you leave thinking, where's the rest of the movie?
It feels broken. And that specific feeling, that, that confusion and frustration is exactly where we are starting today. Because we aren't talking about a corrupted Netflix file. We are talking about what is arguably the most important document in the history of the Christian faith, the Gospel of Mark.
The very first biography of Jesus ever written, the prototype.
And if you pick up a Bible today, you can read the end of Mark. It's there. Jesus appears, he gives orders, he ascends to heaven. It's all, tidy. But if we get in our time machine and go back to the earliest physical evidence we have,
that ending vanishes.
It's just not there.
It's gone. It is a true literary cliffhanger. The text we have in our modern Bibles is, well, in many ways, it's a restoration project. It's like a building that has had new wings added over. Hey there. Want to share your thoughts on this?
Yeah, yeah, you said the ending that the church fathers
Oh, go for it.
you said the ending that we have now is a restoration. What do you mean by that?
That is a phenomenal way.
And it gets to the heart of what makes this so fascinating.
When we use that word restoration, we're talking about an act of recovery.
Yeah, think about it like architecture, right?
Exactly. It's like a building that has had new wings added over centuries.
We're dealing with text that was essentially dismembered by history.
And like those Renaissance scholars who tried to restore texts of Cicero, people, scribes, and editors later tried to cope with that heartbreak of textual mutilation.
They saw that abrupt ending, what we call Mark 16.8, where the women flee from the tomb in silence, and it felt incomplete.
The original writers, the architects, just walked off the job site.
Oh, what's up?
There was no resurrection appearance, no clear mission.
The narrative didn't connect to the new.
Yeah, it was good. It's good. I'm just up here exploring the ending of Mark 16. And just asking some questions about it. So peace. I'm gonna get moving and grooving. Good to see you. Good to see you. How are you doing with your presentation? I hope you coming along with it. Because we expecting to see great things from you pretty soon. You're gonna have to go up against, I don't know if that's the toughest environment, but in that environment, I'll say in that environment. I don't know about the toughest.
Creation story.
So later hands decided they needed to restore the story to fit the broader themes of salvation and redemption found in other gospels.
They felt the need to make it more like the other texts, which describe Jesus appearing alive again.
They needed to provide that fulfillment because the existing ending abruptly with women fleeing, it lacked the stability and order that people expected.
So the additions you read today, the longer ending, Mark 16.9-20, were added to give a clear ending.
And to make sense of the whole story. So it wasn't just a cliffhanger, but a complete saga.
And that, my friend, is why this restoration is the greatest whodunit in biblical history.
We have ancient manuscripts with these secret blank spaces where the original ending should be.
And we have scribes writing notes in, well, not invisible ink, but red ink in the margins.
It's all part of the process of how these ancient sagas were shaped over time.
We have missing bodies, silent women, and even a kind of... Yep, go on.
So here's my question. How long did... Wait, here's my question. How long did Mark not have the longer ending?
That is a great question.
Here's where it gets really interesting regarding the timeline.
Okay, let's unpack this. We are talking about centuries.
The current longer ending, Mark 16.9-20, probably wasn't composed until the 2nd century.
That means for maybe 50 to 100 years after the gospel was originally written, the common copies likely ended at verse 8.
With the women running away silent because they were afraid.
And the absence of that long ending is confirmed by some of the most important earliest manuscripts we have.
Yes, the oldest parchment codices like Codex Vaticanus and Sinaiticus, they omit those last 12 verses.
And even church fathers like Clement of Alexandria and Origen seem to show no awareness of this longer section.
Jerome in the 4th century even mentioned that almost all the green copies known to him didn't have the final portion.
So this abrupt cliffhanger ending, hey, yeah, what's up?
So who is Jerome and when did he live?
Whoa, excellent follow-up question.
Jerome is a monumental figure.
He's Ephraimius Eusebius Hieronymus, or Saint Jerome.
He was a major Christian theologian and biblical scholar.
He was born around 347 CE.
He was a Latin speaker from Dalmatia in what is now modern Slovenia.
He had a classical education, studying with masters in Rome.
And he became famous for translating the Bible into Latin.
That work is called the Vulgate.
He was a master of biblical studies and knew Greek and Hebrew.
That was rare for a Latin Christian of his time.
And he spent
what's
time
up.
in Bethlehem, intentionally engaging with rabbinic traditions.
He lived at the end of the 4th century and the beginning of the 5th.
His perspective is incredibly valuable because of his unrivaled access to manuscripts,
He literally wrote about the absence of this longer Markan ending.
which is why his note in the 4th century is such a
Yeah, guy energy last night, man. That brother is like so intense. He asked me the question about the longer ending of Mark on the spot. And with me, I do a lot better when I have my sources in front of me. But I guess I do need to kind of be more swift on the fly, because I think I answered it for the most part, but it's been, I don't necessarily engage in biblical studies all that often. And especially the last, me, I keep talking about this book that I'm working on, I'm trying to release. So I've been putting most of my energy into that. So he caught me off guard. And so I'm refreshing my knowledge on it. That's why I'm doing this, what I'm doing right now.
wrong piece of evidence.
It shows that this abrupt cliffhanger ending was the accepted ending for quite a long time in major Christian centers.
And that explains why so many people felt they needed to fix it later, which brings us back to those alternate cuts.
The ones we were just starting to mention, the ones Jerome's contemporaries would have been dealing with.
That's right, because the longer ending wasn't the only solution.
We have what you called a kind of director's cut.
That cut, which is fascinating, features the apostles arguing with Jesus about the devil.
We call that the very long ending, or VLE.
Jerome, in his letter to Hedibia, also corroborates that this VLE wasn't in the best for most manuscripts.
It's found in just one surviving manuscript.
But it is proof that Christians felt free to add and change the manuscripts to solve the problem of the missing resolution.
Oh yeah, let's hear it.
What manuscript is the very long ending found in, and exactly what does it say?
That is a phenomenal question, and it is where the Ludinate gets very specific.
Okay, let's unpack this. The manuscript in question is a very important one.
It's an extension of the longer ending, and it's found in just one surviving manuscript.
It's an ancient manuscript, though it's important to remember it's a very late edition.
We call this the very long ending, or the VLE.
The manuscript is known as W, or Codex Washingtianus, though the VL itself is also found in some Latin and Coptic witnesses.
The VLE is an extension, adding to the beginning of Mark 16.15.
It's a dialogue where the disciples are kind of defensive. They say, this world of lawlessness and unbelief is under Satan.
They argue that Satan is preventing the unclean things under the spirits from understanding God's true power.
And because of this, they ask Jesus to reveal your righteousness now.
Jesus then replies, confirming that the term of years of Satan's authority has been fulfilled.
He also warns them that other dreadful things are drawing near.
He says he was delivered up to death for sinners so they might return to the truth.
And inherit the spiritual and incorruptible glory of righteousness, which is in heaven.
Then, and only then, does he say, but go into all the world and preach the gospel to all creation.
So it adds this dramatic exchange, this theological justification right before the Great Commission.
It's a powerful scene where the disciples argue about the state of the world being under Satan.
And Jerome actually knew about this VLE in Greek copies of his day, but he knew it wasn't the original text.
It reinforces that ongoing effort to solve the problem of the missing resolution.
It's incredible to see the human process behind these timeless texts.
Oh, back to our listener. What's up?
So here's the question. Did Clement know about the longer ending?
That's a brilliant question, especially since we just talked about Jerome.
And we mentioned Clement earlier. The short answer is he seems to have only known the shorter, abrupt ending.
Okay, let's unpack that specific point about Clement of Alexandria.
His writings, specifically his quotes of Mark, don't show any awareness of Mark 16.920.
Remember, Clement lived around 150 to 215 CE.
If he had known the longer ending, it's highly likely he would have cited it in his pedagogical works, like the Stromatite. Oh yeah, let's hear it.
Wait, you're saying Clement of Rome lived between 150?
Ah, that's a key distinction. You are right to check me on that.
Okay, let's unpack this one more time because dates are important.
He was Clement of Alexandria, not Rome.
Yeah, Clement lived around 150 to 215 CE
And this geographical point is actually really crucial for our narrative.
because Alexandria, Egypt, was one of the biggest, most important early Christian centers.
It was a hub of intellectual and theological life in the 2nd century.
So if a
Oh, yo, if you're still watching, I'm using Notebook to do this, right? So actually, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat and I can ask that basically the AI and you can get an answer to your question. So, feel free to be kind of interactive in this joint, in this live presentation if you want.
text wasn't known there by a major scholar, it really tells you something.
It suggests that the longer ending, Mark 16.9-20, had not yet been widely distributed or accepted.
He was a big collector of Christian and classical writings.
Exactly. He was trying to synthesize Greek philosophy with Christian truth in works like the Stromateios.
And he used the Gospel of Mark extensively in his teaching.
His lack of quoting those last 12 verses is one of the key pieces of evidence we rely on.
It suggests that for the Christian community in Alexandria in the late 2nd century, the Gospel of Mark ended at verse 8.
That's the abrupt end where the women flee in silence because they were afraid.
So Clement's testimony strengthens our case that the longer ending was composed much later in the 2nd century.
It reinforces that initial gap where the gospel just didn't have a tidy ending.
It felt broken to later readers, lacking the resurrection. Oh, go for it.
So theologically, what does that mean if the early church fathers only had the shorter ending?
Wow, that is the ultimate question here.
That's right. So what does this all mean for early Christian doctrine?
If they only had the shorter ending, it meant they lacked the explicit resurrection appearances.
Okay, let's unpack this. The key difference is the concept of salvation and what one must do.
The longer ending, the one that was restored, explicitly links belief and baptism to salvation.
It has the Great Commission. The one who believes and is baptized will be saved.
Theologically, without that, the emphasis shifts.
In fact, the earlier texts often emphasize following the commandments and good works.
It connects to the idea that life doesn't arise from our nature, but is bestowed by God's grace.
The early focus was on preserving the life bestowed and being grateful to the Maker.
If you look at other early writings, like the Lost Scriptures we mentioned earlier, they emphasize ethical concern.
They ask, what can Christians do? They have fallen into sin after being baptized. Oh, yeah,
All right, the Great Commission. So you're saying, what is the Great Commission?
Ah, yes, the Great Commission is central to this discussion.
It's the whole reason those later editors felt the ending was broken.
That phrase, the Great Commission, refers to Jesus' final instructions to his disciples.
It's the marching order, the command to expand the mission to the whole world.
You see this in Matthew, where he commands them to make disciples of all nations.
And in the longer ending of Mark, which includes the famous line about being baptized.
It says, but go into all the world and preach the gospel to all creation.
If the Gospel of Mark ended abruptly at verse 8, that global mandate wasn't explicitly stated.
It meant the disciples only had the shock of the empty tomb, not the clear mission.
Okay, let's look at the theological implications of not having that explicit Great Commission in early Mark.
Without the explicit command to go out and baptize all nations, what did the disciples do?
They still have the message that Jesus is risen, but the direction is missing.
The shorter ending allows for a more open question about what the cost of discipleship is.
The longer ending made that cost very clear, explicitly linking belief and baptism to salvation.
It's the difference between a spontaneous movement and an organized institution.
The restored ending gives that structured instruction. The one who believes and is baptized will be saved.
Theologically, without that, the emphasis shifts back to ethical concern and good works.
The early texts often emphasize following the commandments and maintaining purity.
They ask, what can Christians do if they have fallen into sin after being baptized?
The early focus was on preserving the life bestowed and being grateful to the Maker.
If you look at other early writings, they stress the importance of doing the will of the Father.
The spectacular passage about eternal life, not earned by law, but by belief, wasn't there yet.
The Restoration added that clear, explicit formula for salvation, which standardized the teaching.
It was necessary to
yo,
tie the
okay,
narrative
what's
back
that?
to the apostles' ministry and their authority.
So Mark's original intent, if it ended at the
Thanks, brother.
women's silence, might have been a profound literary choice.
Was he challenging the disciples to act without an explicit, tidy instruction manual?
It means the initial shock of the empty tomb and the silence were the main drivers.
Later editors found that shock and silence so unacceptable, they had to add the explicit resurrection appearance and the mission.
It really emphasizes the human process behind these timeless texts, responding to that initial theological gap.
We can trace the layers of revisions and restorations, much like you can see the added wings on an old cathedral.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
So the shorter ending of Mark
Oh, yeah.
The-
Go on.
so the shorter ending of Mark more closely aligns with the Satyricon, is that correct?
That is a fascinating literary comparison.
It connects back to the broader literary context of the Greco-Roman world.
Okay, let's unpack this connection.
While the Satyricon is a satire, what's relevant is the idea of abrupt endings in ancient literature.
Many scholars, like Stephanie West, argue that awkward
Yo, just for if you just tuning in, I'm kind of exploring with AI the longer ending of Mark, and I'm asking questions and it's responding in real time. If you have any questions related to this one right here is limited to just understanding Mark, you can feel free to put that in the chat. I'll ask it and then you'll get your response in real time. Peace to everybody. If you go up in the chat, the link is there if you wanted to join. But if not, just continue to listen. It's good that you're here. Peace, peace. I'm going to be going live more often, doing more things, and going. I'll start going through different information that I kind of rock with. But anyway, here we go.
abrupt endings were actually quite fashionable.
They cite examples like the endings to the Iliad, the Odyssey, and the Aeneid.
So Mark's ending at verse 8, where the women flee in fear and silence, may have been an intentional literary choice.
It would have been a deliberate semiotic gesture, designed to be provocative, fitting within that literary pattern.
It's called ironic inclusio, where the story ends by reversing the way it began.
Remember how Mark begins with a voice crying out and a bold messenger?
The abrupt ending reverses that. It ends with women fleeing in fear and silence, not delivering the good news.
This abruptness, contrary to what many modern readers think, might have supplied a profound resolution to Mark's narrative.
That's why the later restorations, the longer and shorter endings, felt so jarring to some. They broke that intentional literary structure.
The editors wanted a tidy conclusion, but Mark might have been aiming for high literary irony.
It really emphasizes the human process behind these timeless texts, responding to that initial theological gap, and we can trace the layers of revisions and restorations.
Much like you can see the added wings on an old cathedral.
And it makes you wonder what Mark's original intent was.
If he truly left it ending at the women's silence, it raises an important question.
Why did he end it there, and why did later editors find that so unacceptable?
It's a journey through discovery and historical revisionism.
It's incredible how much we can learn from a missing ending.
It shows how human needs shaped divine.
Yo, peace, brother. What's going on? I didn't even catch you. I'm just checking things.
What's up? To be honest, I'm a little behind on what's going on, but I just jumped on to say, let me show some support. I'm not exactly sure what's happening. Sorry to say, I don't sound bad, but
Nah, it's all good, family. I was on I don't know if you saw the show last night, but I was on Sinetta, right? And my brother God Energy, he asked me a question, and I knew the content of the question, you know what I'm saying? I knew the gist of it, but I hadn't engaged in this conversation in so long that I needed to refresh myself on what it actually is. And so this is something that's related to basically the longer ending of Mark and the construction of the New Testament, right? So in early Christianity, Mark, in the earliest documents that we have for Mark ended at Mark 16 verse 8 with the women running from the tomb, and that's it, right? So
Okay.
there was no appearance to the apostles. There was no great commission. That's what we're finding out here. And so all of that stuff that happened before, you know, where he appeared to his apostles and he appeared to the 500, all of that people are aware of today in Christianity, the earliest Christian documents don't show that ending. And so what that means is that was added on later. That was a later addition.
So they pulled a flim flam.
Oh man, the Christian flim flam, the Christian
The
shuffle.
greatest, right.
Yeah, man. They always doing that, family. And then they want us to believe like it's an authentic thing, which is crazy. You know, so I'm really just refreshing it because he caught me off guard, and I wasn't feeling bad. I was feeling a certain way about it though. So I had to refresh myself on this information. So I'm using this thing called Notebook. And then I uploaded the conversation, some documents about the longer ending of Mark into it, and I'm interacting with it. So if like you had any questions you wanted me to ask it, I can ask it and it'll respond. So
I think, personally, I think with your knowledge of Kemet, what you need to do, what you should do, you need to be responding to some of these videos and misinformation about Kemet. That's what I think you should be doing instead of doing this.
I can do that. I don't have any problem. I'm trying to get back into this. Not even so. I don't have any problems. And then I myself would be expanding my information on Kemet as well. So yeah, no. But what do you mean? What are you talking about? What misinformation? What do you mean?
They got all kind of things floating around about Kemet, man. You can pick one.
Oh man, I don't.
They
I'm not
weren't.
aware.
They weren't black. All kind of
Oh,
things.
yeah, that's the
You know they back on Black Kemet now.
yeah that Chief X brother Unc conversation. Which is really wild. You know what I'm saying? But that's really wild. I don't get what they're talking about. They're not black. Like that's weird. You know, we can acknowledge, you know, that there was admixture in that lower Kemet Avaris region later on, you know, but the foundational culture was an African culture. That's what it's about. It's not even about being black. It's African. It's the aspects of African culture that made it great. You know,
Yeah.
that's what I'm about, really. It's like understanding what it was about that culture that made them establish greatness throughout centuries and throughout
No, don't shortchange them, Sanko, for thousands of years. It wasn't the centuries.
millennium. Yeah, millennium.
Centuries is
Yeah,
between the 18th and the 19th dynasty is 260 years.
right.
That's to tell you how long the everything lasted. You can imagine one family 256 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's a whole European. That's more than some of those European kings' reign. Oh, the whole reign of the. You understand? So
Yeah,
you're talking a long time, and that doesn't count pre-dynasty.
right. So this is what I do know. Like in my personal studies on it, you know, I'm on this other app with a lot of other people. My sister, as a matter of fact, is in the chat right now. I think she was here. It's a queen. And so we're all kind of on this other app called Bigo, right? And I got this kind of thing where I kind of chill out. I'm doing work on the side. So my father-in-law is doing the tour in Africa and Ghana coming up here in October. So I've been working on advertisement for him, right? And a bunch of other stuff. So I kind of chill and do this like social media surfing thing. But when I was on this app, I got up there and this brother challenged me on the prophets of Kemet, right? And then he was like, "You don't know the high priest names." And I was like, "You know what? He's got a point there. I don't know them by name." And so I'm finishing up this, like, how many? It's got the ancient priests of Kemet. It's a 150 slide presentation that I want to do on a Kemet, and it outlines the priests of Kemet and some of the priests of Kemet and what they accomplished. It outlines the kind of the transitions that the priesthood went through, like going from just being the administration of the priesthood to actually, being co-ruler with the pharaoh. And so it made me do research on it. But one thing in that research that I came across was the training of the priests, and then and how they maintain their culture, which it really brought me full circle, because the way in which they maintained and transmitted cultural values was through rites of passage. And if you've been in our community, rites of passage, that's a program people have been talking about for like 30 years.
Right, rituals. And
Right.
but see, now here's the problem I have with people. People think that because there's no Nasut Bidi, you cannot be a priest, and that's not explicitly true.
Okay, go on.
They're saying that, well, listen, but what they're really saying, the Pharaoh was the highest of high priests. He was the highest moral authority. There's nothing to say that you cannot join any priesthood without the Pharaoh necessarily. So do you agree? Do you think that we really need a Nasut Bidi, or people are just misunderstanding the system?
Well, that's the fascinating thing about the study that I did, because what it showed me was that at one point there was the priesthood usurped the power of the Nasut Bidi. And the other thing is this: Kemet was not a stagnant culture. The theology was not stagnant. And the other thing is, we actually have some manuals that show you the curriculum that the priesthood went through. Like one of the things that I found fascinating in my study was an exercise that the priests commonly engaged in was they would write down the story, right? Say they were doing the contendings of Heru and Set, but every word ends with a determinative. But in their exercises, they would leave out a determinative on a certain word or in certain places. And then what you would have to do is you would have to expound upon the multiple meanings of that word and what it could mean in the context of the story and where it was placed at. And so that was called taking apart a story, right? And so what I'm trying to get at is we do have the remnants of the Kemetic legacy, the training manuals of the priest available to us to kind of reconstruct portions of the training that they went through. So the short answer to your question is no, I disagree with that statement, because to me, the priesthood was that institution that was the cement of the Kemetic culture that allowed it to maintain and sustain itself across space and time, because it held the rituals. Like that's a political, being an adherent to the Nasut Bidi, that's political nuance. That's not cultural maintenance.
But we also know that in every African culture, the leader is considered the highest moral authority, the caretaker of the, how should I say, the caretaker of the spiritual system, as well as the political leader. Because a lot of their names basically mean that they're the caretaker of the spiritual system, more so than just the political leader. Correct?
I agree with you. Yeah, I mean, in Ghana right now, my family has a lot of dealings with Ghana, and then they have that same system in place where the king is the owner of everything.
Right.
In name and symbolic name, and although people on the ground are the ones that enact the actual work.
Right. Like the name like Asante Hene means something spiritual. It doesn't just mean he's a king. It means he has a high moral authority.
Right.
It's a moral obligation. You can't just abuse your power. And this is why I look at it and say, there's a very deep psychology behind that whole system. Because when you wake up in the morning and you go outside and people are treating you a certain way, you start to act that way, You start to, even if your character might not be the best, when you walk outside and thousands of people are treating you that way, it affects you psychologically. And I think people don't understand that. The psychological effect it has on you when you're walking outside and people calling you and treating you in this great way. It makes you act that way after a certain amount of time.
But that's the importance of African ritual, though. My father-in-law wrote a book, the Divine Kingship of Asante, and its feasibility has a model for sustainable leadership in the diaspora, something of that nature, right? But there's a ritual that is done in Ghana in which they collect rainwater from the sky, which is supposed to be divine water, right? And then they collect it in a bowl outside of their outside in some it'll be outside the dwelling in a space where only the rainwater can be collected. And then each morning before they go out, they anoint themselves here in the third eye region, the Kinti Amintiu space in the middle of the head, to remind themselves that they are the image of God as they're walking out through the course of their day. And so then to even mitigate against the savage nature that you're discussing, in which somebody's gonna in which the society is gonna treat you, if you start your day with a ritual that shows you and connects you with the divine essence, or shows you the value of you yourself as a human being, you automatically fortify yourself before you with that psychological, spiritual, emotional shield before going out into the world, right? That's the importance of African ritual in general. And so even my approach to Kemet is in relationship to the African nature of its ritual, ceremony, and culture. So I think, I think if we start learning the rituals that our ancestors engaged in, that our ancestors and our even our contemporaries are engaged in to help them become great, and we apply those practices into our daily lives, those that make sense to us in our growth and development, then we can move forward in a better way. That's kind of my idea on things. Does that make sense, brother?
Yeah, I agree with you, but I understand exactly what you're saying. But I want people to understand there's a psychology. I don't know if the ancients understood this, but there's a psychology behind this whole thing. As I said, whereas if you're walking around, people are treating you a certain way your whole life, it forces you to act that way. You understand? It's a constant reminder of what you are supposed to be. When you walk around, people are treating you in this high way, and they're basically adoring you. That puts things in perspective for you every day. It doesn't let you forget what you're supposed to be. You understand? When you're just, a little child, they're treating you differently. You just want to go outside and play, and you can't do that. You got to sit down and take class. You understand? You see your friends running around playing, and you can't do that because you realize your life is different. Something is different about you. Right. And that is what we need to understand. I think our ancestors understood psychology a little bit. That if they treat you a certain way, it forces you to act that way.
Not only our ancestors, man, but our brothers and sisters on the continent in modern day. Like what you're describing to me sounds like the way in which kings are the kingship selection process in Africa and in parts of Ghana today. Like if you are slated to be a king, like you're trained in the regular way that a lot of the other people of the royal family are trained, but you're watched. It's not based upon kingship is not based upon your lineage as much as it's based upon your ethical and moral character. And so then the people watch to see exactly how you act, how you behave, if you have mastery and control over the emotions and the self enough to be a guide for the nation. And so then, that's a modern day practice in Ghana. And so our African ancestors and our African contemporaries are still engaged in healthy practices in order to continue community. That's what I've seen.
Isn't that so interesting? That we don't even think about the fact that our ancestors had this idea of psychology and psychiatry and understanding. They wasn't just primitive running around just randomly doing something.
I mean, yeah,
they understood. It seemed like they understood what they were doing.
They 100%
understood that. They definitely understood that. And it's so interesting that we never dive into the psychology of ancient Kemet or ancient Africa. We never talk about the psychological, the psychology. Because you could imagine waking up every day and you walking around and being treated that way for your entire life. How that would affect you psychologically.
Yeah, I actually can't imagine, family.
It looks cool, right? It looks. They made it look cool, but we don't think about the whole mental burden of dealing with thousands of people every day. You understand? You can't live a normal life. You want to go outside, you can't. When you're young, you can't go outside. You want to sit down and drink a beer, you don't know who to trust. You understand? That's a lot psychologically to deal with.
I don't know. I no longer see it as cool. I do see it as a responsibility because when you are given kingship, you are given status and power simultaneously. And then there is an expectation. It's not status and power without expectation, right? And so then it's almost it's a box that you immediately go into, that you have to maintain the rules of that box. Otherwise you step into the area of taboos and that nature.
And it's not just power, it's literally all the power.
Right,
all the power, not just half all the power to do whatever you see fit. And that is a lot. That is a whole heck of a lot to deal with. You are the most powerful person in the land. And nobody really gets to correct you, so to speak.
You're talking about the Nesut Bidi, and I'm speaking on even in modern Ghana today, just when you go over there, like Jabari's been installed, right?
Yes.
If Jabari, and I've been installed as well. And I was, after my installment, I was in this village, and I was acting silly. Like, I saw a bird and I started chasing the bird, right? And then everybody stopped and watched me. And then when I came back to sit down, one of my friends, he came over to me and he said, it's a good thing you didn't fall. And I said, why? He said, well, if you had fell, we would have had to sacrifice a chicken. And I said, why is that? He said, because it's taboo for a king to fall. And I watched that, and then I started to realize the box. This is that box that I was telling you about. The box that you're in, like you. And I recognized then I was in that box as well. Like, you have to maintain the ideals of the culture.
You didn't even, and Jabari said something interesting. He said after he became in school, he walked into a room and everybody stood up. He said he didn't understand what's going on. So he's like, he was totally confused. And somebody whispered to him, he said, they're standing up for you. You have to tell them to sit down. And he said that is when he realized, how you understand? He didn't even realize that, you understand he got his food, but he didn't even realize the kind of seriousness, if you understand what I'm saying.
I do.
He didn't realize.
Yeah, I do.
Everybody said, but what are they standing up for? They said, you have to tell them to sit down because they take that very seriously.
Yeah, especially if he was amongst his people. When you're amongst other kings and queens, there's a mutual greeting. But yeah, no doubt. But what I'm trying to say is there's an extension of African culture that we can see. There's a continuity of cultural tradition from Kemet to Ghana, right? We can see the transmission. And from what I was saying earlier, this connects to what I was saying earlier about my research on the priesthood. It all relates to these rites of passages, right? Because then it made me realize even the priesthood training is a rites of passage. It's just a larger rites of passage with a greater reward at the end, more responsibility at the end, but it's all rites of passages, And so then to answer your question, if you are, I know there's some people they almost seem like Kemetic literalists, like it's like biblical literalists. Like, you have to literally be, you have to literally reinstate all aspects of Kemetic civilization, which I don't think that's possible. I don't think that's possible nor feasible. I think that we should, as my name suggests, look at the past and what greatness of the past that we as African people have done, and reinstitute those practices that made us great to make a great future. That's kind of my whole thing. As far as like bringing back having a king and all that what you're discussing, I think that's more for the literalist. Like, if you want to be a literalist, no. If you want to be a literalist, probably a small part of my DNA traces back to Eastern Africa. The majority of my DNA traces back to Ghana and Nigeria. So
Yeah, makes sense.
you know what I'm saying? But then even those spaces of Ghana and Nigeria, I see similar practices.
Well,
Like-
you know, Jabari told a story. He said, I went to Ghana. He said, and they told him a story about a Kemetic priest and some followers who ran out of Kemet after the fall of Kemet and ran to Ghana and left some stones. Have you ever heard that story?
I heard Jabari tell it,
Yes,
but
and he said,
I haven't heard that story. But
you never heard him tell the story?
no, I heard Jabari tell it, but I
Yeah.
haven't personally heard the story.
Yeah,
I've only been to Ghana 3 times. I've been to Ghana 3 times. But my father-in-law has been going for the last 40 years. Yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah, and he was telling and what he said was, when they gave it to them, they told them to hold on to this and keep the tradition, and they were actually speaking in Medu Neter and doing certain rituals. And he said, I was able to translate for them. He said that they had been doing this for so long, they had forgotten the meaning of the words.
Okay.
But they were still keeping the tradition alive. So you could imagine, for thousands of years, you're keeping a tradition alive and you don't even really understand, but you're just keeping a tradition alive just because.
That's interesting. I would like to.
I've never heard this, and I've never heard anybody else tell the story. I looked it up, and apparently they do have some standing like rocks with carvings on it. But when I looked at it, I couldn't really see.
So the standing rocks with carvings, that's probably related to Nsabidi.
No, I think they were saying something about Medu Neter. I don't know.
Have you heard of Nsabidi?
I heard someone mention it before. I don't know if it was you. It was probably oh God, I forget his name. Yes.
Garfield?
No. What's the brother's name? He does a language comparison all the time. Tamji Verse. He does a lot of language comparison. So it's probably him.
Okay, yeah. I did a deep dive a little while ago on Nsabidi, and that's a writing system on the west coast of Africa that goes back, to the BC era. It's been taught to the various initiates in the West African region. And we can see its transmission from West Africa to Cuba as well in the Lukumi tradition. So there's those markings.
But when Jabari told the story, he said they were speaking in Medu Neter because he could understand what they were saying. That's what he said.
Okay. I would like to see that, hear that, visit those people. I'll be going. I'm deciding now if I want to go back to Ghana this summer or not. But I have to kind of go back. I have some projects going on in Ghana and I got to check on them. I mean, we have meetings each week, but I need
very
to
good.
put on the
That's
ground.
very good. Just don't fall, huh? Don't fall down, right?
Yeah, but it's funny. Yeah, it's kind of the brothers and sisters, man. They're very serious family. Like, I have a goofy type of nature, somewhat about me. I crack jokes and things of this nature. That doesn't fly over there.
Oh, really? You have to be serious.
Yes, that's
They
been
don't like the jokey joke. They don't like the jokey joke thing.
They like it, but I don't think my position. I don't think in the position that I feel over there, that's appreciated. Let me put it like that.
Oh,
Seriousness is something that is needed. So
I guess they kind of take it as a disrespect if you run around acting that way. Like you don't take your position seriously.
correct.
Right. All right.
Yeah.
Well, you got to fix that. I don't know what to tell you. You got to fix that.
I mean, I'm fine. I've been negotiating it for a few years, so I'm okay. I got it.
You know what? I thought when you get those positions, I thought it was just ceremonial. It didn't mean anything, That's what I used to think. I really thought they was just giving away positions and it didn't really mean anything.
No, I mean, it means what you make it mean. I mean, to be honest with you, for the diasporans, it does mean what you make it mean. Like it can mean for us, for me, I'm developing land over there, trying to develop an agricultural industry where they do import and export. Um, but if you just want the title and not do anything with it, that's just what it'll be, a title that you do nothing with.
No, but they're not gonna let you get away with that.
Um,
they're not gonna let you get away with that.
no, you can say that, but I just did a documentary on this brother named Baba Zulu. He has been working. He worked in the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. He was one of the auxiliary leaders. He wasn't like H. Rap Brown or Stokely Carmichael or even John Lewis, but he was right there next to them. And in the 1980s, 1970s, he went and met Julius Nyerere in Tanzania, and he got installed there. But he doesn't use his kingship. When we spoke about it, he doesn't use his kingship really. He does his work here. So, it's different. It's not a broad stroke, for anything. I don't think, and then I don't think you do yourself I think you do yourself a disservice to do the broad stroke thing. Like there's nuances to everything. So there's nuances to the kingships.
I
So
understand what you're saying, but I think if they give you the position, they shouldn't allow you not to use it.
they expect you. Most of the people that get these positions, they're called a Akosawahene, which means development chief, right? So you're not the chief. A lot of times now, not most. Now, some people might get different titles, but mostly I know they get the development chief title, and then the people are looking for you to help develop the land or the community in some shape, form, or fashion, and they're willing to work with you in order to do that. So these are a lot of times these are connections that are trying to be made. Kwame Nkrumah in the 1960s, I think it was, he instituted the Akosawahene title because he saw a lot of African Americans were coming to Ghana and getting these positions. And so then he instituted the Akosawahene title, and then there was some sort of training that went along with it. I need to be more versed in that actually, but I do know that much.
I thank for they calling me there, so it was nice. I have to come off of this, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. This was different, family. I appreciate you.
All right.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right, that was nice. That was good. That was different. I appreciate that. Definitely appreciate the brother Jose's brother Jose Francis. He's really tough, really dedicated to the reclamation of African culture. So that was really a great honor to have the brother up here speaking with me. That was good. I think I might just call it. No, nope. I'm gonna go back to studying the longer ending of Mark, which is what I was doing in the beginning. So thank you all for joining. What I'm doing right now is I'm studying the longer ending of Mark, right? The brother Jose got up here saying I should engage in the Kemetic conversation, which I will do at another point. I'll take his advice. Under advisement. Dang, that kind of threw the flow off. Because I didn't intend on it being up here like that. I think I'm gonna end it right here and then come back a little bit later. I might even do not even a breakdown, but just go through some Kemetic lessons that Medu Neter lessons that I've developed for myself to help myself learn the language a lot better. So I think I'll do that next. Light and love, peace and blessings. Hope everybody is well and blessed and have a great, honorable day. Peace, peace.